So it's finally here, the RaceTalk Blueprint. The RaceTalk Blueprint is exactly what the title of the project says it is. It's conversations about race with the blueprint we hope will encourage you to do more than just watch. It's an initiative we hope you'll let thrive and take up space in your life so you can also contribute to a much needed change that needs to happen in society today. These conversations are definitely uncomfortable, raw, and far from black and white, but they have the capacity to heal us through understanding. A bunch of my friends and I got together and we decided to have these uncomfortable conversations turn mini-series, and it kind of turned into something better than we even imagined. It was healing and so foreign and scary, but we made it. So watch us, get encouraged, and download the free Blueprint toolkit we've created just for you to be able to have these same conversations in your circles. On January 6, 2021, the U.S. Congress officiated the election of politicians Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as the 46th President and Vice President of the United States. Hours before this historic event, the United States Capitol building was raided and looted by supporters of former President Donald J. Trump in an attempt to stage a coup to stop this officiation. In this event, the world observed the difference in how this breach of the U.S. Capitol building was handled by law enforcement in comparison to the Black Lives Matter protests that transpired in 2020. The Black Lives Matter protests were in response to the unjust and horrific murders of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and many other Black lives at the hands of law enforcement worldwide. This day in history is a monumental representation of present-day white privilege because the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020 were labeled by a number of media outlets and individuals as riots, whereas the U.S. Capitol breach was not chastised in the same nature. January 7th, 2021, the day after this historical event, is the release date of the RaceTalk Blueprint's second episode titled White Privilege. This episode shows a discussion with people addressing white privilege. It does not address all the areas in which white people experience privilege in the world we live in. This conversation is a start in addressing key points that have historically and currently affect our Black and brown lives. The intention of this discussion is to conduct solution-oriented conversations that can improve our human existence in the world. So white privilege. Talking about this episode, we're not going to be putting like a downer on white people because not all white people are not our allies, right? But not all people are our allies. So we just want to talk about how we can get more white allies, because at the end of the day, this is a problem or an issue that we're facing that we need everyone to be joining together to have a system that is inclusive of all of us, and that takes everyone. So for white privilege, we want to talk about the first part, which is going to be acknowledging what white privilege is and putting it in a talking about it in a way that people can understand, right? And then the second part is going to be how can we support our white allies, understanding where they're coming from and just acknowledging, their strength and trying to get more white allies. And then we'll talk about the solution for how we think we can go about that. Basically, I know, Chris, you had mentioned, and also Randall, it's ways in which white people can mess up more, right? And they get more grace than someone who is Black or brown or minority, right? And the way that we're going to have a white privilege in perspective is doing a checklist that Randall made. Thank you for making that checklist. So it's a list of 25 items, and we're just basically going to be able to see what it is that you have to go through on a day-to-day basis, just to make sure, one, you are surviving and, striving in the way that you want to, but you still are persevering through all the other things that you have to take into account that all white people don't have to think about, right?
Yeah, so I wanted to put together this list, some of the things that throughout my life I've had to consider. A lot of these things I was told by whether it's my mom or my dad, or an older cousin who's been through it. I wanted to compile this, and of course, like as I've gotten older in age, some things have been added, some things have been removed. But I created this to be all encompassing of the average, young Black male in America, right? A lot of these things are what I consider, or what a lot of Black men consider before leaving the house, to make sure that they can return home safely to their families, right? Their mom, their parents, their girlfriends, wives, kids, whatever it may be. A lot of it isn't meant to be like a scare tactic or anything like that, but it's just things that we've kind of stored in our brains subconsciously to make sure that we don't disturb our own peace when we do leave the house. Maybe you might agree, disagree. Some things that might resonate with you more, some things that you feel like I should have added or removed. But from my own personal experiences, these are some of the things that at one point or another in my life I've had to consider.
When you all saw it for the first time, I know you guys were all like, damn. It was real, but it was also something that we have to acknowledge that, like, yeah, if I personally felt good knowing that if I'm seeing that list, I'm not the only one that's been like thinking about certain things before I walk out the house or while I'm out, right? But again, it's different for women than it is for men, but it's still extra. Chris, I know it's your first time seeing that list. What are your thoughts? What do you think?
Like, first of all, I just need to apologize for being so damn ignorant. I mean, when I first started dating my Black fiance, he was my boyfriend then. I just remember like genuinely asking him, like, babe, are you sure it's not in your head? Like, are you sure you're not just paranoid? And like, I was just being very real because as an immigrant, white female, I was like, what the hell? When it says, never throw away my receipt, that's the first thing I do. That's literally like, if it doesn't have something that I can win or benefit or survey to take, I throw it away. And then just coming, like being with him for the last 3 years and just seeing the life that he's lived. And I hate it. Like when he asked me before, like, have you ever been scared of a cop? And I said, no. I said the opposite. When a cop was around, I felt safe. And it's so crazy to know that, like, if God blesses us with kids, like this is something that I will take on myself. And I've just been educated, and he did it with so much grace, and it makes me mad. This is no way to live. Always carry your ID. This is no way to live. I remember the first time I figured something out. My boyfriend and I, and he lived in Brentwood, y'all. Brentwood, like Brentwood. And he was the only Black guy in his building, the only Black person in his building. And we always went to go get yogurt, and I forgot something in the house. I ran back, I came back, and like I was like playing like that little jog to catch up with him. And he has had a hoodie on, and it was like bare, like just after sunset, because he gets like to the draft, like hurts his ears. And so I literally like as I'm running, I see this woman across the street, and he's about to just like turn the corner, and she deliberately like looks at him and like just like runs across the street to get, to not have to pass by him. And I see this from the back. That was the first time I was like, it's not in his head. It's never been in his head. It's like, so it makes me really mad. And I just feel so, it took someone that was so personal to me, that I actually loved and cared for, for me to open my eyes. And what's scarier is the fact that had he never come into my life, like would I continue living an ignorant life the rest of my life? And that makes me so sad. So I just wanted to say, like, I'm here for it. I'm here to be an ally. I'm here to speak up. I am here to do whatever is needed to do, so that my children so that this list won't be a list, when they have to grow up. So
I think the way she said it was perfect. When she said this is no way to live, I think you said it perfectly, Chris, because it's wild. It's almost like it has this like, it's like, what's the term for like when something's like a self-perpetuating negative, where when you say it's no way to live, people that have to live through it, that's exactly what they're thinking. And a lot of Black people that get angry, like, that stereotype of like the angry Black man or the angry Black person, it's crazy because it's like, yo, man, like people got a right to be angry. And it's crazy until you see it, you don't understand. And like, it's weird because it's sort of like this like self-perpetuating thing where it's like people are living through this and they inherently know like this shit is not right, man. This is not cool. And like they're angry, but it's like, there's no like specific thing that happened that they're like, this happened to me and I'm mad. It's just this like kind of like generalized anger that you start to have. And it's really like, it takes a lot of effort to like be above it. You know, it's like, I'm still going to be me and be nice and be cool to everybody, even though this shit that's like eating me up is happening all the time. And I still got to like put on this happy face. And it's fucked up because it's like a lot of like the angry Black people that are out there, they're not naturally angry people. They're just people that are like responding to the shit that they're like, this is so fucked up. Why do I have to deal with this? And like trying so hard to still be themselves, like the like nice person that they want to be. But it's like, man, like the way you said it, I agree with, is perfectly right. It's like, it's no way to live. And like, I commend you for acknowledging that you can see it. And like, I want to give props to like all the Black people that are out there that are still capable of like being their nice selves. Like, damn, it's hard, man.
I feel like the list itself, and thank you, Randall, for putting it together. Yeah. It's crazy to see it as an actual list and everything listed in like numerical terms and to see how long this list is. And I'm sure this isn't even everything. We can probably add on, there can be pages of this. And I think that's really the importance of, you know, talking about these things and also just visually showing it. Because a lot of everything on this list is usually kind of buried internally with a lot of Black men, and it's never spoken about, or it's rarely spoken about, and it's rarely seen. But to have it out in the open in like this format, and it is harsh to look at it, and it's sad to like read through it, but I think it's important to put it out there in the open, because I think my biggest problem with a lot of these things on this list is that no one ever wants to talk about it, or just kind of American mentality when it comes to things like this is just to kind of like sweep it under the rug, or not say anything, or just act like it's nothing, or you know. But we have to confront a lot of these things in order to heal from them and to address them.
I don't know. It's kind of wild how, you know, some people have to go through this checklist, and some people don't. Yeah, so I'm truly appreciative for the list, whether I like to follow it all the time or not.
Yeah. Christina, thank you for acknowledging that, because my question has always been like, do white people know that this is stuff that we go through? You know, like I never knew. And then I figured, well, when they do find out, then what? Like, what do they think? What do they feel? Or like, are they, you know what I mean? Like, how does that then translate to either becoming a white ally, or just not wanting to acknowledge it, or not believing it? And that's something that I've struggled with. So thank you. And yesterday, to your point, when you are talking about Black people who go through all this stuff and then they still persevere and they're still nice and talking to people. Yesterday, I got stuck in a Trump rally in Beverly Hills. And I was with Leah, and we both started crying like crazy. And I did something that I should not have done, even though it's like, okay, yes, your anger, it's valid, right? But there were a bunch of kids driving by. We were stuck bumper to bumper, and they were on the other side, and they had their flags out, driving. And I rolled down my window and I just stuck my middle finger up. And in my head, I was like, stupid, you're the only Black person with another Black girl in the car, and there's thousands of people who do not mess with you. So someone can follow you, someone can do all these things. I shouldn't have done it, but I did it. And the kids yelled out, fucking nigger, from their car. And to your point, when you say, how can you still be nice? We went about our day. I saw several white people throughout the day, and I was still nice to them, you know? But I still had that anger inside. And I didn't realize what you just said, that like we get all this stuff, whether it's hatred or things that we have to go through, and we still are kind and gracious and all these things. But it hurts, right? And that, I think that's a privilege that white people don't understand, that you are hated by people and you're in a crowd of people that can actually smile in your face at this point, because they're like, oh, I have all my people around me. Like, we all agree about not liking you and wanting Trump 2020 and all these things. And it was crazy. It sucked. It hurt.
dude, it's not easy, man. It's like, it's not easy. I give props to anybody. Like when I see people who have that cherry attitude and like, can like, just like, like, I'm like, props to you because you know what they're dealing with. You're like, man, this person is so fucking cool. Like, how are you this cool? Like knowing, that's the weird, like, those are some of the connections that Black people have between each other. Like, I don't want to call it shared pain, but it's like these, like, what this person is dealing with.
I thought it was kind of interesting you guys bringing up, Black folks kind of being able to, or having, or feeling that need or that obligation to, no matter what happens to us or to our friends, family, or our people, or people in our community, kind of throwing that smile on. And it kind of makes me think like, you can only, get slapped upside the head so many times or slapped in the face so many times to where you just want to lash out. And like, even when you might see it in a movie, where someone might be trying to prove a point and someone keeps getting hit or slapped or whatever, and then keep getting up, dusting themselves off and putting a smile back on. It looks odd to see, you know what I mean? But, true, like you said, that is the reality. That is the Black experience in America of, trying to maintain the peace and just getting home safely. You know what I mean?
Especially in the corporate world, because if you can't, you won't have a fucking job. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah.
In the corporate world, it's like, I mean, I think everybody is fake in the corporate world generally. Like, you kind of put on your work race, what race you are. Everybody's sort of fake there. But like, especially for Black people, it's like, my experience with the corporate world has always been one where it's like, you never want to be that like angry Black person. You never want to be like someone who seems that they're like disagreeable, because there's that feeling that it will affect you more adversely than it would someone else to be disagreeable in that circumstance. A lot of it, man, you just gotta, it's self-preservation, because a lot of the world is, for lack of a better term, full of shit, and people are generally can be very hypocritical. So everybody just wants to kind of watch their own backside, and
I'm looking for a quote right now. I don't know if you guys are aware of it, from Denzel Washington, when he was talking about the person who attacks the other group of people once they've been like basically kind of being taunted and taunted and taunted. And it's, who are you calling the person evil? The person who attacked the person, or the person who created the taunting? And that's what, inflicted the person to then attack. But that's, to your point, Randall, and also to, it's like corporate America, you still got to be quiet, right? Shut your mouth.
They say woke is broke. Yeah. So it's like, if you're woke and if you're like gonna like stand your ground and you're gonna speak your truth all the time, you won't have a job. You know what I mean? Or people won't want to work with you. And I know people who did not take that approach, throughout their lives, and I do commend them, because like it takes a certain kind of strength to do that and live in your truth and do all the things that you feel are right. You know what I mean? Regardless of the repercussions that may come. And like, you see that now with, obviously the biggest one being Colin Kaepernick, where his third eye opened, and at that moment, everything just went downhill for him. You know what I mean? Career wise.
I think that's one thing we still need to like get in the like know of. Like, we're fighting for maybe not ourselves, but for generations to come. Just because we may not see the change tomorrow doesn't mean that it's not our responsibility still.
It's really about the future. All of these conversations, all of these things that we're acknowledging now is like, what is the future going to look like if this continues? What do we want for the younger generation before us and future leaders in positions of power? Like, even if that's what you might have to be yourself, you might have to take on a power position in order to kind of see the world that you want. That's kind of what I think about when it comes to like, white privilege. I'm not like here to just bash on and make people feel bad about these things or make people feel down. And I feel like that's kind of like a perception that a lot of Americans from the outside looking in kind of see when people get offended by white privilege. Like, they think that it's like a personal attack on them. It's not. It's really about just trying to have like a more balanced future, a better future where, the opportunities are available for everyone, and people don't feel so fearful or they have to hide, or they have to completely just adjust. So that's kind of what I think about.
Yeah. So let's switch over to white allyship. Vicky, she had brought up how angry she was at the list and how there are a lot of things that she was coming to the realization that many people that she cares about go through that. And she brought up a question. So it was, what is it that a white ally can do when they're in the vicinity of an experience? I know our last example was what if they see someone like that works inside a retail store or whatever have you following a minority in the store or making them feel uncomfortable. What can you do in that moment to like show your allyship, but not come off as like the white hero, right? Because we don't need heroes. We just need people to support and, you know, correct people. So does anyone have any new responses for how you would like someone to show up in a situation that you may be in, or you may know of other situations that other minorities are in, and how a white ally can show up in that situation?
I think people need to speak up, but it can't be theatrical and it can't be for the camera. You know, it's like, if you come up to somebody and you just calmly speak to them, they're gonna listen. It can't be about theatrics. It has to be sincere. You know, like it's like someone you care about that you really want to get a point across to them, and you're not arguing. Just come up and you quietly just speak something that's sound and strong to them. Like if a white person went up to a security guard in the store and said, "Listen, man, what you're doing is dehumanizing that person, and you know you wouldn't want it done to you, so don't do it to somebody else." Not for a camera, not to be theatrical, just to get the point across to the person. That's how people can be allies, where it's like, but if someone feels the ability to step in and just calmly give, you know, solid advice like that, it would be helpful. And even that's a lot to ask, but I would say that's what I would ask more than I don't want people to be getting all up in arms on my behalf. But if they want to say something wise to somebody in a way where they'll listen, that would be cool. That's fine.
Alexa, you had said 3 things. I don't know if you remember it when we talked about this last time. Do you remember that phrase you said?
Yeah, my biggest thing is like, you know, in our groups, we all know individuals, and we all have like our comfortable groups, right? If you see it, if you hear it, just call it out. I've been doing that a lot more, especially in my inner circles, right? Because I think too, everyone's point here is like, yes, we can definitely be in a situation where we talk calmly to someone, but if you have that comfortability with an individual, they're more open to listening rather than just like writing it off. I was recently in a situation where I went to a friend's house, friend's gathering, and it was mostly Latinx individuals. And one of the guys used the N-word, and I was like, "Hey, like, please don't do that around me." And he got all rowdy, right? And like real upset with me. And he was like, "Who the fuck are you?" And like cussing at me and all of this stuff, right? And so, and that's just me being calm and asking. But because we didn't know each other, and because we didn't, like, he didn't understand the context of like why I don't feel comfortable with that, his response was to like attack me for it, right? So I think small steps, right, of like in your inner circle, if that's happening, call it out, because even small changes ripple into larger ones.
So in terms of supporting our white allies and getting them to, you know, be understanding, but also getting more white allies, I think that the last time we spoke, we talked about how it's all about like understanding and communication, and having our white allies know that we are acknowledging that they are doing something that is not like, you know, popular in the group that they're in, when they're in that, like, they're in the situation where they do have to speak up for us. And I think that one thing that we agreed on was making sure that if we have a white ally, we're building that relationship to communicate, so then they can continue to come and talk to us and, like, release and kind of just let us know how they're feeling. Like, damn, like, that was fucking hard. Like, yeah, we know it was hard. It's not going to be easy, but just for them to know that you still have our support, right?
Are you an ally if you do it one time? Or is an ally someone who is consistent at, like Alexa was saying, like she's been doing it in her inner circles? Because you can have a one-off situation where the person might actually not be an ally, but maybe a person of color would consider them an ally because they would speak up, right? But then maybe that person just did it because, who knows, maybe there's some kind of devoted religious person, or maybe their son or something was. I want to make sure that even the white people that will be watching this, who are like, come from my background, like no idea like what that word would be, understand what exactly is an ally.
Yeah, I think it's a lifestyle thing. I don't think it's like off the box. Like, if you want to be a white ally, it means you are empathetic towards someone that does not look like you. You maybe, you know what I mean? Like Chu said, everyone has their own shit going on. Sometimes you don't want to say anything. Sometimes you're doing something. However, it still does not make that a valid excuse to do it one time and call yourself an ally for the rest of your life. Like, that's to me, that's bullshit. You're lying to yourself. You're not an ally if you're not an ally.
Yeah.
In our eyes, it might not seem like much, right? Because we're the ones who have to like live each day in our skin. But to someone who hasn't had to fight this fight, or even a fight like comparable to this, it might feel like a lot to ask for, right? And I'm not giving anyone the benefit of the doubt, but I think I gave it, last time we spoke, the example of one of my former teammates who I know deep down is a good guy, and he posted a whole, article on Players Tribune about being the difference between not racist and anti-racist. I was like, look, when you do post this, when you do send this in, and they do post this, things are going to change in your life, and relationships are going to change. I just want to make sure that you're aware, because it's not even like you're just saying this in your small circles. You're broadcasting this on the internet where anyone can read, right? And you're already a beloved, guy in your hometown in Cleveland, Ohio, around the NFL. I just want to make sure that you understand what you're getting into. And I respect him because he's like, no, I understand. And I'm it makes me even more excited to post this and to join this journey with you, because this means too much. The tide is changing, right? There's this movement it's on a train, and it's full steam ahead. For us, it's like, yo, this is normal for us. We've been having these conversations. We always have it. We always have to have our own backs. You know what I mean? But for someone to jump in who hasn't had to have this fight before, it can be a lot. So what I've always wanted, and I think this might segue into our next topic, is like what how we need to, because we were asking for our white allies to show up for us. How can we show up for them so that we can equip them with all the tools necessary to have these conversations, difficult conversations, with their friends and family who they've known for years and haven't had to have these conversations before?
Of course, like, we can provide the tools, but I think like this should be a value pillar, the same ways that, like, if you believe in integrity, you should believe in this. Like, you should believe in equality, you should believe in racial equality. Like, it should be part of your everyday. It should be part of your value system. And like, it's really crazy to me that it is not in some people's worlds.
Like, you want someone that you don't want quantity over quality. You're not like trying to get a movement of people like, hey, white people, like, come and help us out. Or when an ally aligns with you, that means that they're in it to the end. It's a loyalty, right? So I think that for me, what my fiance has shown was grace, because I've messed it up a few times in my inner circles and said something with intentionality of like making it better. And he's like, oh, hon, like, that's not really what it like that. And I was like, dang it, I really tried so hard. And then, but it gave me such a, like, he wasn't ever harsh with me. He was like, okay, well, now you have honestly the opportunity to go back and be like, I even got it wrong. Let me back it up and show you like the right way. So I think for me, allyship that means commitment, and you want quality instead of quantity. You don't want a bunch of people that are going to screw it up and just do it like when it's convenient. The consistency is there, but also like the quality. And just when we align with each other to be allies, that means that I'm going to seek to study what it is that you need me to be loyal to. And then you're going to eventually, like, we give and take, like, and then you will equip me with what, or like correct me along the way to become a better ally for you.
I think to Chu's point, I think it's, you kind of feel that sincerity. If there's,
Yeah.
and you know, Chris, I think you can agree, if you know your fiance felt that sincerity, that you really wanted to, you know, to make a difference, is to say something and stand up and do what's right. It's an energy that you feel, and you know, right? And so it's like, you know, that grace that you can give, I think I really think it should be unlimited. If the ultimately what you need to get done, people are willing to help you to get to that point, right? Because, you know, a lot of these things, like we can look up, we can Google, you know, everything about, you know, the history of Black people in America. But when it comes to the, you know, current Black experience in America, that's not something that's as easy to Google or as easy to, you know, really internalize when you're reading it on a screen. And I think that's where a lot of Black folks kind of we need to kind of transition from being angry and not having to hold, you know, someone's hand through a lot of these situations, to being more understanding, because they've never lived a single day in our shoes ever. So it's hard for them to fully understand the full scope of everything that we go through, right? But I think if we can have that grace to explain it to them, it's not rocket science. So when we explain it to them, it's like, oh, like, and Chris, you could definitely attest this. It's like, oh, like my fiance explained it to me, and like he taught me, like it makes perfect sense. Like, to a rational human being, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think rather than us getting upset, getting angry, I think that grace can be unlimited for the people who actually want to know and are making a conscious effort to change within and then change their surroundings.
I agree. Before we get onto the solution part and our breather moment, you took the words right out of my mouth. Like, it's not rocket science. That's why we're like doing this whole project, right? It's just having the conversation and stumbling along the way, but still pushing forward, right? Like, there's levels to being a white ally. Being a white ally doesn't mean you need to like be the superhero every time. Like, being a white ally also consists of, if you're in a group of people that are talking about something that is racist, if you don't say anything, and they want to get your input, like, what do you think about this? I don't. That's your response. You know what I mean? Like, that's also like not participating in a conversation. If you're not ready to say something, that's also part of being a white ally. You know what I mean? Like, it starts in the household, like school.
But is it not more than that now? Now isn't it supposedly like you need to be saying something?
Yeah.
It's
So,
no
but
longer that you're just quiet and
if you don't say anything, you're part of the problem, type of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also, if you're not ready, don't say shit.
There's different approaches with those things, but I mean, ideally, yeah, you would want to say something at the time. That would be ideal, but sometimes you may not be able to. But I think to completely let it go, or you maybe come back to it at another time and address it with that person, is just as important.
Even if you don't say something, like, things go around and come around. I believe in karma. I believe in spiritual, like, if you do good, you get good. If you do bad, and doing bad, yes, not doing something, it's going to come back to you some way.
Like, when I first started dating Christopher, like, he literally was like, babe, is it okay if I buy you some books? And I'm like, yeah. So he got me like a Malcolm X. He got me like, he's like, I want you to know like every single aspect. Well, I mean, I'm bringing Malcolm X as like a white girl, like on my airplane rides. And I'm just like reading Malcolm, and I'm just like, I don't know. Do people get mad? Like, do I like, like, I'm literally putting myself in the educational like seat. And
Good.
if you're going to be an ally, like the sincerity, like Chu was talking about, it shows up. And then I practice stuff. Like, I'm like, babe, I heard someone say this. Like, he's like, okay, let me see what you would say. And I practice it. He's like, you're cute. You're kind of missing the point, And then I just sit there and practice it again. And
where's your man? We need him over here. Where is he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I have to introduce you guys to him. Like, he's freaking amazing. So, but like, not all my white girlfriends and not all my white guy friends can have, Black girlfriends or boyfriends. Like, they're not all gonna do that. So like, how then do I my inner circle? And it starts really with my heart.
Lead by example.
then my mindset, right? And then my family.
You're right.
Yeah.
Let's go to a breather moment because we got to wrap up soon. That was all great. And Chris, thank you for saying that because I love you 10 times more than I already did, and that's a lot. Thank you, girl. Most of you were on the call yesterday. We did not record. We turned off the record button, but Vicky, her mother passed away. She's supposed to be in this episode, and she wanted everyone to know. So I think our breather moment should just kind of be like a moment of silence just for her mom. Take a minute, right? And just kind of make sure that we send our hearts with her and our good spirits, right? So you take a minute. Okay.
This episode has got me really, really excited. Mainly because I hear my favorite word in the world, which is grace. I think it was the breathing exercise, the breathing or exhale episode, but that's something that I take with me every single day. I try to exercise every chance I get. Is just exercising grace, whether it's with a coworker, a client, a family member, an ugly thought of mine that I'm having about myself. And Chu and Randall, what you were talking about is just the power and grace of us Black people. We're incredibly graceful. We're incredibly gracious, and I try to do it until it doesn't feel right. Where it's kind of turning the other cheek, extending a little more patience. I I run any and everything through my body first. And if it feels right, continue to be that gracious, happy, unbothered person. But if it doesn't feel right, then yeah, you should speak up on behalf of yourself. And for me, just offering what I can to allies is letting them know too that very much that I see them and that I appreciate them, and just simple as a thank you or I see you has tend to do, I guess, a lot of good or help, just as giving them whatever reassurance that they need. I think often they're in a very uncomfortable position, speaking up on the behalf of people of color. But for me, just extending a thank you or I see you or keep going has done a lot for my relationships with my white allies. So
sorry, I know I didn't say anything the whole episode. I kind of came in late, but Tony, yes, great point. That was my last point that I just wanted to throw in there too. On top of the gracefulness that you were talking about, but just acknowledgement, period. Just being able to acknowledge people who are willing to help you out. Those words are very, very meaningful, and it goes a long way. Even sometimes you would hear people say, you don't have to thank me, it's okay. You don't have to say anything about it, but do it anyway. Because sometimes you have to be vocal about that. It definitely reassures them that what they did was right, and it would encourage them to keep going and keep doing it over and over again. And I wanted to make one more point about, the definition of ally. And I know you guys pointed out consistency, 100%, I agree with that. But even the ones that do it only one time, we still have to acknowledge that, because everything helps. Every gesture helps, whether they did it one time or not. I remember I was having this back and forth conversation with this person who was mad at a lot of the Gen Zs for posting about the Black Lives Matter movement protests that they've been doing on their Instagram or social media, saying that I'm not that way. And the movement that I'm doing with my group and organization, we don't post it or anything like that. We don't show anything. We just do it because we believe in what we're doing. And I said, look, it doesn't matter. You know, if they're posting it on their social media and they're able to touch one person from their friend group, it means a lot. You know, whether they don't believe in it or not, or whatever the case is, the fact that they're able to touch one person is a big deal. So, and that person could have more motivation than they do and post it even to more friends. And then that the word is spread that way. So ally can be, yeah, I know definitely they're not an ally because they're only doing it one time, but I just want to also just mention that we should acknowledge that anyway, regardless of, you know, whether they're consistent about it or not. Let's acknowledge that, because who knows? They can do it one time and 6 months down the line, they can just say, you know what? I remember this person told me something, they acknowledged it. It meant so much to me. I want to learn more about it. Just like Chris is going right now, learning a lot of the history of African Americans, all these things that she's going through right now. You just never know who you influence that way, you know? And, you know, Alexa's saying, see something, say something. That's a New York saying, like, you know, it's all over New York. And I agree with that sentiment for sure. If you see something, always say something.
As you were saying that, I was imagining like if I'm getting like jumped by a group of people and one person sees it and just swings onto one person, yo, thank you for that, dog. Like I needed that. Like that's an extra punch that
That's
they're
love.
not giving
That's
me.
love.
That's love.
I got thumbed out. I got thumbed
I love
out.
to do it ever again, but thank you. So, solution part. We had 3 main aspects for both white people and then for Black and brown people to kind of take a look at. So, acknowledgement, compassion, and communication. The acknowledgement for Black people was to acknowledge that, yes, there is frustration involved in how we have to go about our day and day like lives just to live, right? The fatigue, I'm tired, to be honest, and the reality of our feelings and our actions, they're not supposed to match. Like you're supposed to feel angry, but we're not supposed to respond angry if we're trying to get to that change, but it's still valid, right? And then for white people, the acknowledgement is knowing that this list is real. And then the compassion part for Black people, have compassion towards ourselves, have some self-care, because you're right, that anger will get you upset and you just either shut down or, like Andrea said before, you blow up. And for white people to have compassion, once you acknowledge that stuff, have compassion to know that don't beat yourself up because you didn't know before, and don't get caught up on like, how did I not see this? But more so have some compassion to move forward. It's like, okay, acknowledge, work, not acknowledge and ponder, right? And the communication for white people and Black people, we have to communicate together, but white people need to communicate with white people and Black people need to communicate with Black people. Because to be honest, I would like to know about the communication that white people are having amongst each other to talk about, like, how did we get here? Like, what made us like say it was okay to continue to keep treating them like this, or not them, but like Black and brown people like this? What, like, I want to know how, why. So that conversation needs to be had within the white people community, and then, you know, maybe tell us whatever. But I feel like just communication all around with your own people and then cross-culturally. So yeah, what are your thoughts?
It's crazy. Those 3 that you have, I agree with all 3. If I would just quickly put them in my own words, I would say empathy, sincerity, and courage. And courage, to me personally, I'm not trying to convince anybody else, just to me personally, courage is the number one thing lacking in our entire society. It takes courage, man. Like, it takes courage to be the one person to disagree. We don't, as a society, have courage because everyone is scared of the consequences of what they could lose if they show the courage. But courage is what is required.
And I just wanted to add, sorry, that like I love all that idea, but education and knowledge has been my pathway to be an ally. And I think that if you are an ally, it literally is aligning or being loyal to someone else's strategy, right? So it's like, I just finished reading Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. And this is how I get into people's spaces to communicate. Hey, my latest read, did you know that this, and then they get interested. So I really think that, maybe you guys supplying resources, whether that person is more into podcast or music or poems or books or whatever, I think education is very important.
Chris. I'm glad you brought up education because it's super important with just getting a better understanding. But yeah, like you mentioned at the end, like different formats, what works for you. But the education portion is so important, and I want people to focus on education beyond just like a soundbite on the internet or just only look, because I feel like a lot of people, their education only goes as far as like what they're looking at on the internet these days, where it's like, I really want more people to open a book or go deeper, go into a documentary, go into something that's with a real expert in the in the field, not just like a talking head or a celebrity or anything like that. So I'm glad you brought that up.
So yeah, thank you for talking about white privilege. I hope we have gone through the ears and minds of at least one person to understand. And thank you for bringing your courage to the table and your vulnerability, and just bringing yourself to speak your truth.
Amen.
Absolutely. Cool.
Hey.
Sounds good.
Love you guys.
Bye.